Welcome to the debate. Today we are looking at a creature that has been woven into the human story so tightly that we often forget it existed long before we did. We're talking about the horse, equus. We see them in pastures, on racetracks, or in movies, charging into battle, and we think of them as companions or tools. But when you zoom out, the horse is a biological entity with a staggering 50 million year history. Human influence covers, barely 5,500 years of that timeline?
And that is exactly where the tension lies. It might be a small slice of time, but it was a surgical intervention. The central question isn't about how much we love horses. It's about what they are. Is the modern horse a triumph of natural evolution that humans merely partnered with? Or is the animal we know today essentially a human-manufactured artifact? A piece of, let's call it, biological technology, engineered for war, labor, and aesthetics.
I take the view that the horse is a masterpiece of natural evolution. Its core biological identity, the herd instincts, the sensory apparatus, the very physical structure, remains dominant. Humans simply tapped into an existing biological marvel. We are passengers on their evolutionary journey, not the conductors.
I see it very differently. I believe that what we call a horse today is a human invention. Through selective breeding, captivity, and domestication, we have altered the animal so fundamentally from its true wild state that modern horses are defined more by human design than by natural selection. We didn't just tap into a marvel, we rewired it.
Well, to understand why I say nature is the architect, you have to look at the deep history. Long before a human ever thought to put a bit in a mouth, the horse's defining characteristics were forged on the plains of North America 4 to 5 million years ago. But the lineage goes back even further, 50 million years, to a creature called Ethereum. This wasn't the majestic stallion you see in statues. This was a dog-sized, forest-dwelling creature with separate toes, sort of skulking around eating leaves in the woodlands.
Right, a completely different animal. If you saw one today, you'd think it was a weird tapir, not a horse.
Exactly. But here is where the engineering miracle happens, and it's all nature. The climate changed, the forest receded, and the grasslands expanded. This animal had to adapt or die. Evolution drove them to become larger to see over the grass. But more importantly, they had to change their running gear. Those separate toes were useless on hard, open ground. Over millions of years, the side toes shrank and the central toe enlarged, fusing into a single, efficient hoof. That hoof is a shock absorber capable of galloping at high speeds. That wasn't us. That was the Ice Age.
The hoof is impressive, I'll grant you.
But it's not just the hoof. It's the teeth. Grass is actually a terrible food source. It's full of silica. It's essentially microscopic glass. If a forest animal tried to eat steppe grass, it would grind its teeth down to the gum line in a year and starve. So the horse evolved a tooth battery, high-crowned teeth that continuously erupt throughout their life just to keep up with the sandpaper diet. That is specific, hard-coded engineering for a specific environment. The horse is a survival machine built for the open steppe. Its speed, its size, its complex herd dynamics, these aren't things we taught them. These are things they needed to survive wolves and saber-toothed cats.
You were describing the chassis. I am talking about the software and the bodywork that we've modified. The wild logic you speak of, flight response, herd signaling, is, I would argue, vestigial in the modern horse. We have overridden it. You talk about the natural horse, but I'd argue the natural horse is effectively extinct. If you want to see a true horse, you have to look at Przewalski's horse.
The Mongolian wild horse.
Yes, and it is the only surviving truly wild horse. It has never been successfully domesticated. It's stocky, has a mealy muzzle, that oatmeal coloring around the nose, a short upright mane that looks like a mohawk, and an aggressive, stubborn temperament. That is what nature built. It's practically a different species in terms of behavior, compared to the docile animals we keep in stables.
It's a magnificent creature, but it's still equus.
It is. But look at everything else. Look at the archaeological evidence from the bow tie culture in Kazakhstan, dating back 5,500 years. We found horse skulls with distinct bit wear on the premolars. From the very moment we touched this animal, we started physically reshaping it to be a tool. We didn't just ride them. We milked them, we ate them, and we bred them. The vast majority of horses on Earth today, from the massive Shire pulling a plow to the tiny Shetland in a petting zoo, are products of human selective breeding. We exaggerated traits for our utility. We wanted speed, we got the thoroughbred. We wanted strength, we got the Percheron. A racehorse is as man-made as a chariot.
You're focusing on the cosmetic changes. And that brings us to a really critical distinction, the definition of wild versus feral. You mentioned Przewalski's horse as the only wild horse. I agree, it's the only one that has never been domesticated. But I strongly disagree that the others have lost their nature.
You have to distinguish strictly between those two terms. This is where the romanticism gets in the way of the biology. People look at the Mustangs in American West, the Brumbies in Australia, or the Camarcos horses in France, and they say, look, wild horses. But they aren't. They are domestic animals that have gone feral. They are abandoned technology reverting to a state of nature. They carry the genetic imprint of human interference. The Mustangs have Spanish origins, for instance. They aren't an evolutionary triumph. They are escaped livestock.
But doesn't that actually prove my point? The fact that these abandoned technologies, as you call them, can immediately and successfully revert to a state of nature proves that the wild is still the dominant force. Look at the Camargue herds in the Rhone Delta. When left alone, they don't stand around waiting for a bucket of grain or looking for a stable. They immediately revert to ancient social structures.
Which serves a reproductive purpose, sure.
It's more than reproduction, it's survival strategy. A dominant mare leads the herd to water and grazing. A stallion defends the harem against rivals and predators. This is identical to the behavior of the Przewalski's horse. The software hasn't been overwritten, it was just paused. And look at the native breeds like the Exmoor pony. These aren't just escaped thoroughbreds. The Exmoor pony has toad eyes, heavy hooded eyelids designed to protect against the wind and rain of the British moors. They have that same mealy muzzle you mentioned. These breeds have changed very little since the Ice Age. The primitive horse is still alive and well within the domestic bloodlines.
The Exmoor is a great example of a native breed, sure, but humans have still managed them. We have still culled them. And when humans try to get back to nature, we end up with monstrosities like the Tarpon recreation. The original Tarpon is extinct. We killed them all by 1887. So what did? We tried to artificially recreate it by crossbreeding Koniks and other ponies. We are literally manufacturing the primitive. We are so obsessed with control that we think we can engineer wildness back into existence. That isn't nature. That is a theme park exhibit.
The tarpon reconstruction is a specific scientific project, but it doesn't negate the resilience of the Exmoor or the Soraya. The Soraya, found in Portugal, looks shockingly similar to the horses painted in the caves of Lascaux and Nyock 18,000 years ago. Same dun color, same dorsal stripe down the back. That's not human design. That's a genetic lineage that survived despite us, not because of us. The survival instinct is identical to their ancestors.
Okay, let's pivot to where the human hand is most visible and, frankly, most brutal, engineering for war. Because this is where the whole partner argument falls apart for me. We didn't partner with them, we weaponized them.
I would frame that as a partnership that changed history. Civilization was built on the back of a horse.
It was built on the exploitation of the horse. Look at the Scythians. They were the first to truly terrify the world on horseback. They created the centaur myth because the fusion was so complete the Greeks couldn't tell where man ended and beast began. But then look at Genghis Khan. The Mongol Empire wasn't built on horse whispering, it was built on turning the horse into a high-speed logistical machine.
But the Mongols had a deep cultural reverence for the horse.
They had a system. This is the crucial difference. European armies were tethered to supply lines, wagons of oats and grain. If the wagons stopped, the cavalry died. The Mongol horse was a solar-powered engine. It ate the landscape. That biology allowed Genghis Khan to ignore supply lines entirely and move armies across continents at speeds that physically shouldn't have been possible. They traveled up to 100 miles a day because they swapped mounts, riding one while the others grazed. They treated the horses like replaceable batteries.
But they only succeeded because they understood the horse's biological needs. If they had treated them like machines and ignored the grazing, the army would have starved. They worked with the biology.
They worked with it to manipulate it. And sometimes they just disregarded the biology entirely for a tactical advantage. Consider the story of Chetak, the Marwari horse. This is the ultimate example of manipulation. In the Battle of Haldi Ghati, Maharana Pratap put a mask on Chetak. Not armor, a mask. It was designed to make the horse look like a baby elephant, complete with a trunk.
That was to confuse the enemy war elephants. It was a brilliant tactic.
Think about the level of manipulation there. Elephants have a strong maternal instinct. They won't attack a calf. So humans dressed a horse up as a baby elephant to trick a mother elephant's instinct, just so the horse could get close enough to be impaled. Chetak reared up, planted his hooves on the elephant's head, and allowed Pratap to attack the driver. Chetak was mortally wounded in the process. We disguised its very identity to trick another animal. That is not partnership. That is sacrificing a biological machine for a tactical advantage.
That is a tragic story, I admit. But for every Chetak, there is a Bucephalus. This is the counter-narrative. When Alexander the Great was a boy, he saw this magnificent black stallion that no one could ride. It was wild, rearing, dangerous, a man-killer. His father, King Philip, wanted to send it away. Alexander didn't use force, he didn't use a specialized bit or a whip, he used observation.
He noticed the shadow.
Exactly. He realized the horse was terrified of its own shadow moving on the ground. He turned Bucephalus toward the sun, blinding the shadow behind him, and the horse calmed down instantly. That is understanding the sensory world of the animal. Alexander didn't break the horse. He bonded with it. Bucephalus carried him to India, not because he was forced, but because trust was established.
Trust established through conditioning.
I disagree. Look at horse sense. We didn't engineer their 360-degree field of vision. We didn't design the Fleming response, that thing they do where they curl their upper lip back to trap sense in the Jacobson's organ to analyze pheromones. We didn't give them 65 degrees of binocular vision. Humans have to learn to accommodate these senses. If you approach a horse in its blind spot directly behind it, you get kicked. That's the horse dictating the terms of the relationship, not the human. We are the ones who had to adapt to their sensory reality to get them to cooperate.
We adapt to their senses so we can manipulate them more effectively, which leads me to the physical reality of breeds. You mentioned the engine being the same, but have you looked at a Falabella next to a Shire?
They are extreme examples, certainly.
They are grotesque examples of human whimsy. The Falabella is a miniature horse, bred down to the size of a large dog. It can't be ridden, it serves no purpose other than novelty. Then you have the Shire, a massive draft animal, bred for pulling weight that no natural horse would ever need to move. Or look at the Arab. The Bedouins bred them for the desert, yes, but look at the modern show Arab. We have fetishized that dished face, the concave profile of the skull, to the point where some of these animals have respiratory issues. We have the Appaloosa with its specific spotted coat. Breed societies and stud books are the ultimate proof of my position. We control which stallion mates with which mare. We have removed natural selection from the equation entirely. In the world of the thoroughbred or the Lipizzaner, survival of the fittest has been replaced by survival of the fanciest.
I see your point about the extremes, and I admit, the show ring can distort reality. Breeding for type over health is a problem. But beneath the hood, the physiology is unchanged. And not all breeds are human whimsy. Take the Shetland pony.
The tiny ones?
They weren't bred to be cute. They evolved on the Shetland Islands north of Scotland. Food was scarce, the ground was boggy, and the wind was freezing. Nature selected for small size because a big horse would starve there. They have thick double coats and massive manes to survive the wind. The Connemara pony in Ireland is the same, shaped by the rugged, mountainous terrain to be sure-footed and hardy. We may have put a name on them and written them into a stud book, but the type was dictated by the geography, not a committee of humans.
Yet what did we do with the Shetland? We took those island survivors and shoved them into coal mines as pit ponies because they fit in the tunnels. We took the Connemara and trained it for dressage. We take the raw material, maybe shaped by geography, and we immediately repurpose it. We don't just let them be.
But the capability to do those things comes from the animal's innate versatility.
Even your created breeds rely on ancient traits. The hot blood energy of the Arab is just the flight response dialed up to 11. The cold blood temperament of the Percheron is just the energy conservation strategy of a large grazer. We are mixing and matching traits that existed in nature 50 million years ago. We are remixing the song, but we didn't write the music.
I think we've auto-tuned the song so much it's barely recognizable as the original track. But we are reaching the end of our time, so let's try to pull this together.
Let's do that.
When I look at the horse, I see a creature that has been fundamentally colonized by human intent. Yes, the biological substrate is ancient. I grant you that the bones and the organs are equus. But the horse of history, the charger carrying a knight, the plow animal turning the soil, the show jumper clearing a fence, that is a human creation. We saved the Przewalski's horse from extinction, and we should be proud of that, but it stands as a lonely reminder, a ghost of what we have otherwise replaced with our own designs. We have turned a wild spirit into a subservient technology.
And I see it differently. I conclude that the horse is not a machine we built, but a force of nature we learned to ride. Whether it's a feral Brumby surviving in the Australian bush or a high-class Lipizzaner performing airs above the ground, those massive stylized leaps where they kick out in midair, the creature remains an Ice Age survivor. It still possesses the instincts of a prey animal on the open plains. It still checks the wind for wolves. It still finds comfort in the herd. We didn't invent the horse. We just held on for the ride. And the fact that they allow us to do so, that Bucephalus allowed Alexander to mount, is a testament to their complex social intelligence, not our engineering.
I suppose we can agree on one thing. The horse occupies a unique space. It's an animal that allowed humans to change the world, building empires, revolutionizing agriculture, yet it remains defined by its own ancient sensory-rich experience.
Absolutely. We can observe that perspective, the ear twitch, the wide-eyed stare, but we can never fully possess it. It's a partnership, however unequal, that defined civilization.
And perhaps that mystery is why we are still talking about them 5,500 years later.
Indeed. Thank you for listening to The Debate.